would allow the U.S. government to spy on people who use Telegram.
The U.S. government, or maybe any other government, because a backdoor is a backdoor regardless of who is using it.
That's right.
And
that's a little surprising to hear. Maybe it's not surprising, it's offensive. You're confident that happened?
Yes. There is no reason for my engineer to make up the stories. Also because I personally experienced similar pressure in the US. Whenever I would go to the US, I would have two FBI agents greeting me at the airport, asking questions. One time I was having my breakfast at like 9 a.m. and the FBI showed up at my house that I was renting. And that was quite surprising. And I thought, we're getting too much attention here. It's probably not the best environment to run.
Why would had you committed a crime?
No, they were interested to learn more about Telegram. They knew I, left Russia. They knew what we were doing, but they wanted details. And my understanding is that they wanted to establish a relationship to, in a way, control Telegram better. I understand they were doing their job. It's just that for us running a privacy-focused social media platform, that probably wasn't the best environment to be in. We want to be focused on what we do, not on government relations of that sort.
Government relations. So then you came to UAE, to Dubai.
Yes. 7 years ago, we moved here. We first wanted just to try it for half a year, see if it works out. And it turned out to be a great place. We never looked back, and we never wanted to change the UAE for any other place after that.
Why?
Well, for a number of reasons. First, the ease of doing business here is so high. For example, you can hire people from anywhere in the world as long as you're paying them a good salary. The residence permits, they're granted automatically. It's very different. If you try to do that in Europe and some other countries, it's very different from them. Second, it's very tax efficient. Third, the infrastructure is great. You get a lot for the minimum amount of taxes you are paying. The roads, the airports, the hotels, everything. I think you witnessed it yourself.
Yes.
But I think more importantly is that it's a neutral place. It's a neutral country. It's a small country that wants to be friends with everybody. It's not aligned geopolitically with any of the big superpowers. And I think it's the best place for a neutral platform like ours to be in if we want to make sure we can defend our users' privacy and freedom of speech.
So in the time that you've been here, there have been a number of wars and threats of war, precursors to war. Have you had any pressure from the government here, honestly, any pressure from the government here to reveal a backdoor into Telegram or to ban anyone or to make any changes to your business?
Zero. That's the best part. For all the 7 years we've been here, there's been zero pressure coming from the UAE towards Telegram. They've been very supportive, very helpful, and it's a big contrast from whatever we've experienced before.
What about what you've experienced since you moved here in those 7 years? Have you come under pressure from other governments under whose jurisdiction you don't fall, but to accommodate their demands?
Well, of course. Well, Telegram is a large platform. We are popular in many, many countries. And we've been receiving a lot of requests, demands. Some of them were legitimate. Like if there was a group of people who was promoting violence, there was some terrorist activity that was spreading violence in some parts of the world, publicly posting things that any decent human being would disallow or wouldn't want to be posted. We would help them. But in some other cases where we thought it would be crossing the line, it wouldn't be in line with our values of freedom of speech and protecting people's private correspondence, we would ignore those.
Can you give us an example of a request that you thought crossed into censorship and spying, violating people's privacy?
Well, there's I would say a very funny story related to your home country. After the events of January the 6th, we received a letter from, I believe, congressman of the Democratic side, and they requested that we would share all the data we had in relation to what they called this uprising. And we checked it with our lawyers, and they said, you better ignore it. But the letter seemed very serious, and the letter said, if you fail to comply with this request, you will be in violation with the US Constitution or something like that.
So they wanted data on people who voted for the other guy in the election.
Well, they wanted the data of people, who were demonstrating in Washington or wherever they were doing. You're probably right. I'm not an expert in US politics.
Yeah.
What was funny about it is 2 weeks after that letter, we got another letter, a new letter from the Republican side of the Congress. And there we read that if we give out any data according to the previous request, we would be in violation of the US Constitution. So we got 2 letters that said, whatever we do, we'd be violating the US Constitution, in a way. That was my understanding of these letters.
From the same legislative body, both from the US Congress?
Yes.
So how do you respond to that?
Well, the same way we respond to most such requests, we decided to ignore them because it's such a complicated matter related to internal politics in the US. We don't want to take any...
I believe this strongly, if you ignore your problems, most of them do go away.
That's very true.
It is very... No, it says it, but it's true. That's amazing. Have you ever had demands that you can't ignore?
Well, it depends, right?
Well, unreasonable demands.
So I would say the largest pressure towards Telegram is not coming from governments. It's coming from Apple and Google.
Huh.
So when it comes to freedom of speech, those 2 platforms, they could basically censor whatever you can read, access on your smartphone.
So, do you run the risk of being thrown out of their stores?
Exactly. That's what they make very clear, that if we fail to comply with their guidelines, so they call it, Telegram could be removed from the stores.
Well, that would be not a small thing for you, right?
Well, it won't be a small thing for us, because obviously a big chunk of the world's population will lose access to a valuable tool that they're using every day. But it will not also be a small thing for them. I believe there must be find some compromise in such cases. But Apple and Google are not very compromising when it comes to the guidelines. If they believe some content is against their rules, they will see to it that all the apps that are distributed through their stores comply with these rules.
Are any of those rules, or do you interpret any of those rules? Do you believe any of them to be political in nature?
Some of them, but it's not the rules, it's the application of the rules. The rules themselves, they're pretty general, right? So there must be no violence, discrimination, publicly available, child abuse materials. It's hard to disagree with that.
Yes.
But then when they start to apply those rules, sometimes we are not agreeing with their interpretation, and we try to get back to Apple or Google, whoever it is, and say, look, we think you got it wrong. We think actually this is the legitimate way of people expressing their opinions. And sometimes they do agree, to their credit. Sometimes they disagree, and we still have to take some content down, at least in the version of Telegram that is distributed through their platforms.
So there are a number of conflicts going on around the world right now, and that may accelerate. Mm-hmm. So would you expect that the number of demands and the intensity of those demands, the persistence of those demands, would increase as the wars become more intense?